Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them. And we are removing them. We have no choice. And I feel very strongly about it. Thank you very much.
The script imagines a dramatic political crisis between the United States and the United Kingdom, following an extremely confrontational speech by a fictionalized version of a future American president. In this scenario, the long-standing alliance between the two nations fractures under a wave of public accusations, intense economic threats, and escalating diplomatic tension. The UK Prime Minister is portrayed as cornered on all sides, struggling to manage a domestic political storm while also navigating an unprecedented foreign policy confrontation. Markets shake, public opinion divides, and senior officials attempt to prevent a collapse of trust between the two countries. The narrative unfolds as a high-stakes political thriller exploring pressure, power imbalance, and the limits of international partnerships. A shattering public challenge from Washington. This opening section of the script depicts the imagined U.S. president issuing a fierce public rebuke of the British government. Standing before a global audience, he sharply criticizes UK leadership, portraying their policies as irresponsible and dangerous. In this fictional account, he frames Britain as failing to protect its borders and accuses it of welcoming individuals he describes as security risks. The tone is confrontational, pushing the dramatic tension higher by presenting the speech as a deliberate humiliation delivered with global visibility. Instead of diplomatic caution, the script shows aggressive rhetoric intended to dominate the news cycle and unsettle the UK government. This moment establishes the power imbalance driving the rest of the narrative, painting the United States as applying public pressure with unprecedented severity while Britain absorbs the shock. Claims of security failures and a narrative of contrast. The next portion highlights the fictional president describing a stark contrast between American border enforcement and what he portrays as leniency in the UK. In the story, he presents charts and statistics to bolster his argument, constructing an image of the United States as tough and effective, while painting Britain as unprepared and exposed. The language is crafted to maximize emotional impact, describing migrants in dehumanizing terms and emphasizing sensationalism. The intention is not nuanced policy debate, but a confrontational portrayal meant to trigger outrage. This narrative device serves to deepen the tension between the two nations within the story, positioning the U.S. president as a figure willing to use dramatic claims to influence domestic politics abroad and pressure allied governments into compliance. Public reaction and a wider political shockwave. In this part of the narrative, the script shows social media exploding with conflicting reactions. Some citizens are enraged by the criticism and defend Britain, while others fear that the imagined crisis exposes deeper national vulnerabilities. A viral clip from an academic adds to the sense of public panic, suggesting the country is on the brink of losing its most crucial ally. These scenes highlight how modern political conflicts unfold not only in press conferences and diplomatic channels, but also across platforms where opinions spread rapidly. The fictional scenario uses this to exaggerate the speed at which national confidence can erode. It paints a picture of a society wrestling with identity, leadership, and its place in the world while watching an international crisis unfold in real time. Depiction of market instability and capital flight. This section focuses on a dramatic portrayal of financial markets reacting with fear. The narrative describes investors relocating funds, companies shifting listings abroad, and analysts warning of long-term economic damage. The imagined American president's harsh remarks about London's financial environment amplify the pressure. This depiction serves to illustrate how political conflict can rapidly influence economic sentiment. The script uses this to increase suspense, showing the UK government struggling to calm markets while facing growing global skepticism. The financial turmoil acts as a secondary front in the crisis, emphasizing that economic confidence can evaporate quickly when an ally signals distrust. Through these developments, the story paints a bleak picture of a nation confronting financial vulnerabilities triggered by geopolitical tension. The question of sovereignty and border control. The narrative escalates further when the fictional U.S. administration reportedly offers to deploy American specialists to enforce border control in the English Channel. This moment is framed as a severe affront to British sovereignty, implying that the UK can no longer manage its own borders. The script highlights the humiliation such an offer would represent and the impossible choice it creates for the UK Prime Minister. Accepting would signal weakness, but rejecting could trigger the threatened economic retaliation. This section explores themes of national pride, autonomy, and the limits of foreign influence. It emphasizes how easily sovereignty becomes strained when a powerful ally applies forceful demands, showing how the political and symbolic stakes can overshadow practical policy considerations. Mounting internal pressure within the British government. The story then turns to the turmoil inside Downing Street. Advisors are described as fearful, ministers divided, and conversations about political survival intensifying. The script portrays cabinet members questioning leadership direction and worrying about their own futures if the crisis worsens. Rumors of resignations and internal conflict circulate as the government struggles to present a unified stance. This internal fracture serves to heighten the sense of urgency and instability. The narrative uses these scenes to depict how political pressure from abroad often amplifies domestic divisions. As the imagined crisis worsens, political loyalty becomes fragile, strategy becomes chaotic, and fear takes hold. This section underscores the story's theme that leadership is tested most severely when external threats collide with internal weaknesses. A cooling alliance and strategic distance. At this stage, the script suggests that Washington is deliberately distancing itself from London. Trust between the two governments appears to erode, and shared intelligence and military cooperation are placed under review. This fictional scenario portrays a symbolic unraveling of one of the world's closest alliances. The narrative amplifies the drama by implying that Britain's strategic relevance is being questioned and that long-standing defense arrangements are no longer guaranteed. Through this imagined breakdown, the story explores how alliances can shift when political leadership changes or ideological disagreements widen. It highlights the fragility of partnerships built on shared values when those values appear to diverge. The deterioration of trust becomes a central theme, shaping the broader geopolitical consequences portrayed in the script. The economic domino effect on trade and industry. The script then delves into the implications for British industries dependent on American partnerships. It imagines environmental regulations being used selectively as trade barriers and warns of supply chain disruptions. The point of this section is to show how deeply interconnected the UK economy is with global systems and how vulnerable it becomes during diplomatic conflict. The narrative describes the potential collapse of trade agreements and the withdrawals of major corporations seeking more stable markets. This creates a sense of cascading economic pressure. The intent is to heighten the overall tension of the story by revealing how multiple sectors, from manufacturing to finance, could be affected simultaneously, leaving the government with limited tools to respond effectively. The personalization of diplomatic tension. Another dramatic element in the story involves strained relationships between specific ministers and the American president's team. The conflict becomes personal as past remarks are cited as obstacles to communication. This portrayal underscores the idea that diplomacy is not only about policy, but also about relationships and perception. The narrative uses these personal rifts to deepen the sense of isolation encircling the UK government. It suggests that political decisions are influenced by interpersonal grievances, escalating the stakes. These moments add to the storyline's tension by implying that repairing the alliance requires not only strategic compromise, but also significant political sacrifices at the individual level, further complicating the already fraught situation. A nation confronting its own limits. The final section reflects on the broader themes the story explores. The fictional UK government is portrayed as facing an overwhelming convergence of economic, diplomatic, and political threats. The crisis exposes the limits of national autonomy in a world where alliances, markets, and security partnerships are deeply intertwined. The narrative emphasizes that misjudgments in foreign policy can reverberate through every aspect of national life, from defense strategy to financial stability. As the tension escalates, the storyline underscores the fragility of the global order and the pressures facing leaders navigating competing ideologies. Ultimately, the tale functions as a cautionary exploration of how quickly international relationships can unravel when trust erodes and political agendas clash across borders.